cast lets us in on the untold memories of Mary Tyler Moore.
I'm one of the lucky ones.
This is Entertainment Tonight, the most watched entertainment news program in the world.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Entertainment Tonight's Memories of Mary Tyler Moore. I'm Bob Goen.
And I'm Julie Moran. And it's hard to imagine that the series about a single career woman making it on her own almost didn't make it. The very first live audience to see the show didn't think it was funny and barely laughed.
You might just make it after all.
Looking back, how could anyone not love Mary, Rhoda, Mr. Grant, and company? But then again, these were new characters to that first audience in 1970.
They were confused. You know, they knew me from Dick Van Dyke. They didn't know who this Rhoda character was who was coming on angry at me and yelling and saying I wasn't going to get her apartment.
I'm Mary Richards. Hello. Get out of my apartment.
They thought that I was mean to Mary. And they said, oh, the Rhoda character's got to go.
Alan Burns co-created the series with James L. Brooks.
I remember a post-mortem in our office where I bet you there were 30 people in the room. More people than seemed to be in the audience that night came in to tell us what we were doing wrong.
But the surprisingly simple solution came from the script supervisor,
Who said, well, in order to get them to like Rhoda, why don't you have Bess, the little girl who was then 10 years old, love Rhoda?
3 nights later, with essentially the same script, the show went through the roof.
But before the series even reached the pilot stage, it had been a tough sell with the network.
Our concept was we would do the first show about divorce. And we went over to CBS to tell them about it, and they all turned ashen.
The network said there's nothing funny about divorce in that way that those networks have. And also, think of it this way, it might look as though she had divorced Dick Van Dyke, a swell guy.
The network won that battle and the character wound up single instead. But Mary had bigger concerns. Would America still see her as Laura Petrie?
Yes, of course I was nervous, and that's why I wore that awful wig the first year. It was so thick and so long and so heavy I could hardly turn my head. I had to turn my whole body.
Fortunately, the feminist movement embraced this independent associate news producer.
Mary became, sort of by coincidence, the poster girl for young, unmarried women.
Building a top-notch cast around Mary proved another considerable challenge. Valerie Harper was a last-minute discovery after she improvised her way through a window washing scene.
So Valerie came in with a prop bucket and sponges and all that kind of stuff, which everybody tells you, actors never bring props with you. You'll fall back on them, and nobody will ever hire you if you use them. We were blown away by what she did with her props.
But what Valerie remembers most is meeting Mary.
I thought, oh my God, look how great she looks in white pants. That's a body. And it still is.
Ed Asner found the key to playing the irascible teddy bear Lou Grant was to imitate his 2 older brothers.
Because they're brash and, you know, they're always giving the shots. And I was always the butt of the shots.
Ed may have won the role, but Mary wasn't convinced at the audition.
And he left, and Mary said, well, I guess we keep looking, huh? Now, she will deny this, and she will hate hearing this on national television, but Mary didn't think he was very good at the time.
Alan originally wanted Gavin MacLeod for the role of Lou Grant, but Gavin asked to read for the wisecracking news writer Murray. He immediately landed the part, even though they envisioned Murray as TV's first gay character.
We actually, I think, had put out feelers to Charles Nelson Riley for that part. Charles wasn't interested.
Oh, I bought a sport coat that color. Brings out my eyes. Which one, the blue or the pink?
Today, it's hard to imagine that anyone could have played the bumbling anchorman Ted Baxter as well as the late Ted Knight. But the role almost went to another actor.
It was Jennifer Aniston's father, who Jennifer was probably 2 at the time.
Cloris Leachman won the role of Mary's nosy neighbor, Phyllis, by taking a direct approach to her audition.
I went over and sat on his lap then, and that was Jim Brooks.
Slowly, this ensemble cast captured the hearts of America and added another favorite with Georgia Engel as Ted's naive girlfriend, Georgette.
I had to lose money in order to get from New York out there. I was collecting unemployment, by the way, when I got the call.
In 1974, Valerie seized the opportunity to star in her own series. But Mary Tyler Moore never missed a beat, casting Betty White as the sex-obsessed Sue Ann Nivens. As a company, the Mary Tyler Moore cast may be unparalleled.
Do you realize that 6 of our regular cast members won Emmys?
Combine that with inspired writing, and you have an enduring classic that holds the record for most Emmy wins with 29, and is still enjoyed in reruns today. In fact, one episode was voted the best television episode of all time by TV Guide. Entitled Chuckles Bites the Dust, it pushed the comedy envelope by finding humor in the death of a beloved clown.
It was in very bad taste to be making jokes about death. You don't do that on a situation comedy.
A little song. A little seltzer, darling.
The show was 5 minutes light when filming began, but that was without the audience's uproarious laughter.
By the end of the show, we had been able to gain the 5 minutes extension.
And by the end of their triumphant 7-year run, all the fears and concerns about the show ever making it seemed just as funny.
We didn't call it the Mary Tyler Moore Show. We just called it Mary Tyler Moore. We thought that was cozier.
Welcome back to Entertainment Tonight's Memories of the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Betty White and Gavin MacLeod were 2 stars who brought big laughs to the newsroom. Now, Betty was only hired for 1 episode, but she made such an impression, she got a permanent job as the oversexed, man-hungry, happy homemaker.
That is the cruelest man I have ever seen. I think I'm in love.
She was the neighborhood nymphomaniac, that's right, but she was a good home economist. She was an excellent home economist, but she just had a sideline.
Betty White's 4.5-year run on the Mary Tyler Moore Show as the extremely outgoing Sue Ann Nivens almost never was. She and Mary were already good friends, and the producers thought if they gave White an audition and she didn't get the part, it may cause a rift.
They tried about 12 other girls, and they couldn't find anybody sickening enough, you know, so Ethel said, well, go ahead, use Betty. It's a one-shot. She won't be any harm. Well, it just worked, and that night, Alan Burns and Jim Brooks said they were going to go home and write another one.
White went on to win 2 Emmys for her role as the happy homemaker. And though it seemed she was in every episode, Sue Ann appeared in less than half the shows each season. Now 78, White says the role was groundbreaking.
Sue Ann came in, you know, and just caused a little havoc.
But the seemingly always happy White went through some hard times. In 1981, her husband of 18 years, Alan Ludden, died of stomach cancer. They met in 1961 when he was the host of Password. In 1988, White accepted her husband's star on the Walk of Fame, which the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce had placed next to hers.
It means more to me than I can possibly say. It means more to him than I can possibly say. And having us this close together, I won't promise that in the wee small hours of the morning we won't fool around a little bit.
Betty's career has spanned over 50 successful years. She garnered an Emmy for her work on NBC's hit The Golden Girls, and currently she stars in CBS's Ladies' Man. But Betty says that part on the Mary Tyler Moore Show was the one that kept her going.
Oh, it was the luckiest thing that ever happened to me.
Hello? Hey, wait a minute. That is not our responsibility, mister. We don't know. Hello? Hello?
As Murray Slaughter, Gavin MacLeod seemed more like a real person than a character, a trait that has served him well in his long career. He began in the business as an usher at Radio City Music Hall. His first big break as an actor came in children's theater. Broadway and television roles followed. In 1991, at the taping of a reunion special, MacLeod told us why the show was such a hit.
It was pure entertainment. It was pure, wonderful, clean, wholesome entertainment. And that's the kind that sustains, I think, for years and years and years. And I think that's why the Mary Tyler Moore Show on reruns is sustaining all over the world.
And MacLeod's career sustained, going straight to the helm of the Love Boat in 1977. For 9 years, Captain Steubing steered millions of viewers to exotic locations. It was at a Love Boat cast reunion in 1991 that MacLeod philosophically spoke about the opportunities he's had.
Life is a series of those doors closing, doors opening, doors closing, doors opening, and I've been very fortunate. The doors always seem to open for me, so I'm very grateful. You know what I mean?
Everybody, to Entertainment Tonight's Memories of Mary Tyler Moore.
An Academy Award and 6 Primetime Emmys makes Cloris Leachman one of the most honored actresses in Hollywood. Happy-go-lucky on screen, Cloris's real life has had its share of comedy and tragedy.
Oh, I'm so popular. Let's just see who this is. Hello?
The phone has rarely stopped ringing for Cloris Leachman since landing the role of Mary's wacky landlady, Phyllis Lindstrom.
Yes, Rhoda, that's very thoughtful of you, dear, but Mary and I have the same taste. Good.
She was self-absorbed and eccentric, and her character's desire to be Mary's best friend often put her in direct competition with Mary's true best friend.
Would you let her in, Phyllis?
Whenever she could have one-upsmanship with Rhoda, yes. Oh, yes.
Off camera, Cloris and Valerie Harper were close, as they were with Mary.
We said to Mary, we have to remember that you're the star, because she didn't act like a star.
The same year she was cast as Phyllis, Cloris landed the role that would earn her an Academy Award. While on hiatus, she filmed her part as a lonely, neglected housewife who has an affair with a high school senior in The Last Picture Show.
When I came back, I told everybody about it, and everything, never dreaming that I would be nominated, and never dreaming that I would get it.
This wasn't Cloris's first taste of victory. While attending Northwestern University, she won the title of Miss Chicago and was a finalist in the 1946 Miss America pageant. She used her scholarship money for acting school in New York and was soon appearing in supporting roles on Broadway and TV. But while she took occasional roles, Cloris's acting career took a back seat to playing mother to her 5 children until the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Call the police.
One of her most unique relationships was forged with Ed Asner.
He's always had a thing for me, and I've always loved it. In fact, I said I would do it with him if he lost 30 pounds. He got down to 28 pounds, and he shot up again.
After Cloris earned 2 Emmys, Phyllis got her own show, which lasted 2 seasons. She joined the cast of The Facts of Life in 1986. The same year, she tragically lost her 30-year-old son. Found with an empty prescription pill bottle, cause of death remains undetermined.
It's something that never ends. It's something that goes on, and you think, okay, now let's go back, reel back to, you know, do it differently, do something differently.
Despite rough times, Cloris's zest for life endures.
What have I gotten myself into?
In 1996, the then 70-year-old actress agreed to pose for the cover of Alternative Medicine Digest, clad only in fruit and vegetable body paint. Looking back on the experience now, Cloris has no regrets.
I've had 5 children. You think, oh, what the hell? I mean, but it was beautiful. It was fun and wonderful.
Ed Asner first worked with Mary in the 1969 film Change of Habit, which also starred Elvis Presley. A year later, he would be her boss at WJM-TV, where he would butt heads with one of his co-stars.
He'd say outrageous things, just bug the hell out of you. I stopped speaking to him, and he stopped speaking to me.
Ed Asner and Ted Knight often locked horns on the set, but on the whole, Asner loved going to work.
It put me on the map, made my career, and just doing the show gave me great happiness.
However, his start on the Mary Tyler Moore Show got off to a rocky beginning when the dramatic actor went in to audition for the comedy.
Ed didn't know he had the capacity he had for comedy.
And I was always afraid of comedy.
Ed came in and read for us, and it was flat, and it was nothing.
After his disastrous first attempt, Ed later returned and actually asked the producers for a second chance.
I have an idea that they wanted to see how big a jerk I was willing to make myself.
Came back and he nailed it. He absolutely nailed it.
Job in hand, Ed then had to nail it in that pilot episode. And did he ever? Ed's first scene with Mary has become one of the most famous in television history.
You know what? You've got spunk.
I hate spunk.
Well,
I hate spunk.
Most beautifully played moment I have ever done in my life.
That was one of those love at first sight marriages that really did work.
I had the 300 people of that audience in the palm of my hand.
You don't like me? I'll fire you.
Off to a great start, there was still a commitment for only 13 episodes, but Ed could have cared less.
It didn't matter to me whether it went or not. I just loved doing it.
And as Ed told us in 1994, the Emmys started pouring in.
The first one was a miracle. The second one substantiated the first one. So it was a big thrill. And 3 just made me feel cocky-locky.
The cast held Ed in pretty high esteem, too.
The old curmudgeon, he's wonderful.
After the show ended, Ed took his character, Lou Grant, into an hour drama that lasted another 5 seasons. More Emmys followed. With a total of 7, Ed has more than any actor, but still he found it hard to move from TV to film.
Godfather was yet another picture at that time that I was considered and then dropped because I was a TV face.
Ed went on to star in several more short-lived TV shows, but he found work drying up, in part, he feels, because of his well-known liberal political activism.
It was made clear to me that I was denied work because of that.
But there are nothing but happy memories about the Mary Tyler Moore Show, except for those occasional spats with Ted.
There were minor little discrepancies that took place between people, but in the main, it was the fastest 7 years I've ever experienced in my life.
Ed Asner's battles with Ted would continue to simmer on the set, and later we'll tell you what happened when their feud came to a boiling point.
On the last episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show, the newsroom staff was fired by new management, and only Ted remained with the station. That show is considered a TV milestone and contains one of the small screen's most famous moments.
I think we all need some Kleenex.
There's some on Mary's desk.
With a shuffle, the Mary Tyler Moore gang ended their enormously successful 7-year run. The emotions on the set that final week carried over into the filming of that classic episode.
It was so tough. Our abilities as actors were surely tested that night. It was a very painful experience. There was an ache in my throat for about 3 weeks afterwards.
I still can't watch it without seeing it underwater.
Ed and Ted and Gavin, these great big bears of men, were crying.
Who came up with the move is still unclear. Even the show's executive producer, Alan Burns, admits it wasn't scripted.
I remember coming down and being surprised to see that centipede of people move across to the desk.
Yes! E.T. was there in 1991 when the cast reunited for a CBS special 14 years later.
I cannot tell you the thrill it is to be back together.
At first, some were skeptical to do a show without Ted Knight, who had passed away in 1986.
When Ted died, of course, well, I kept telling him, well, that's out of the question because we don't have Ted. You can't do Mary Tyler Moore without Ted.
That idea stopped the minute we lost Ted. How could you possibly do something together without Ted?
But when it was decided the show would be the cast discussing their favorite moments from their 7 years together with a special tribute tonight, they all eagerly agreed to do it. And Gavin MacLeod explained the show would always be a part of them all.
Everything happened during those 7 years on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. People were born, people were married, people were divorced, people died. Everything that happened was a chronology of life. And so I think we all basically have some of those memories that are still within us, you know, and so you flash back a lot.
Valerie Harper's character was so popular, she even had her own spin-off, Rhoda.
You want me to tell you the truth? I'm going to tell you the truth. This is going to be my apartment. All right.
I feel more comfortable and more creative and freer with her than almost any other performer I've ever worked with.
Valerie was a tremendously mothering person, and it was just fun to be around her.
Hello, police. There's a man with a gun trying to get into my apartment. Rhoda! Mary Richards, 119 North Weatherly, apartment D. Hurry! He's coming in! Rhoda! He's pulling the phone out of my hand!
She was so popular on the show that producers started planning her spin-off just a few years later.
I said, Mary, what if, when we decided to do it, I said, what if it fails? She said, then Rhoda moves back to Minneapolis. I thought, oh my God. She said, you don't want to be my sidekick all your life. And you know what? Yes, maybe I do.
We did it with a lot of reservations. Not that she couldn't carry her own show, because we knew she could. But what would it do? Would it damage our show irreparably? Well, as it turned out, it didn't.
Valerie was on Rhoda for 4.5 seasons, and her on-screen marriage to co-star David Groh was a huge rating success. After the show ended, she did feature films and TV movies, but then started developing her own show, which became Valerie, with Jason Bateman playing her son.
Let's get to it.
Valerie went on to try her hand at 2 more sitcoms, City in 1990 and The Office in 1995. Neither lasted very long, but her personal life has been on track all the way. Married to husband Tony Cacchiotti for nearly 13 years. She's busy now on stage, something she'd done earlier in her career, till she got that legendary call to come try out for The Mary Tyler Moore Show.
As a theater actress in New York, if I could just get in a hit, if I could just get a play that would run past a day or a week. And here it was. Here was my long run.
Welcome back to Entertainment Tonight's Memories of the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Ted Knight had created more than a few squabbles on the set. He also raised a few eyebrows in Hollywood by turning his back on one of the industry's most prestigious awards, the Emmys.
It's very commercial is all it is. And it's a big ego trip. It's self-gratifying.
In 1983, Ted Knight told us that since the Mary Tyler Moore Show ended, he no longer wanted to participate in the Emmys. He was extremely bitter about how the awards were chosen, despite the fact that he had won 2 of them for portraying the empty-headed Ted Baxter.
Hi. You haven't met me. I'm Ted Baxter, the anchor man.
And I'm Mary Richards. I'm the new,
Wonderful. I've been telling Lou we needed a new one.
While on the show, Ed Asner says that Ted resented the fact that Ed seemed to win an Emmy every year.
In the beginning, he didn't like my winning all the awards. That bugged him, because he knew how valuable he was to the show.
We were sitting together at the Emmys one night, and for about the 5th straight year in a row, Ed had won the Emmy, and gosh, Ted thought it was his turn that year. It was so hard for him. He said, God, do you know who those guys are who choose? I said, Ted, you turned into your character. And we both had a good laugh over that.
Ted was a decorated World War II veteran who had been a journeyman actor before getting the role of Ted Baxter. But when the show became a hit, he worried that fans would think he was as dim-witted as his character and would grumble about it on the set.
It was tough to be around sometimes. There'd be a squabble on the set, and then it would all die down, and we were all family again, which is the way it is in good families.
Ted would go wacko from time to time and would get hard to deal with.
I think it bothered Ted that he wasn't the top banana after Mary.
Red China just signed a mutual defense pact with Albania. Now, Albania, that's the capital of New York, isn't it?
Ted came in and started to cry and said, I don't think I can play this part anymore. And I said, why? I mean, I was so startled. And he said, because people think that I'm that person, that stupid guy, and I don't want to do that anymore.
Ted was convinced to stick with the role, and his volatile relationship with Ed Asner continued to build.
I stopped speaking to him, and he stopped speaking to me. But I found that when I'd go on stage, I was so pissed at him. He betrayed none of it. He'd be on stage, and he'd be doing his Ted shtick. And my anger at him got in the way of my work.
But Ed insists the cast was a family, and his family feud with Ted was eventually patched up.
We'd end up at lunch. It's always a lunch.
3 years after the show ended, Ted got to be the star of his own series, Too Close for Comfort. In the show's 5th season, E.T. visited the set when it was renamed The Ted Knight Show. Although it was not disclosed at the time, Ted was suffering from cancer. In this interview, just 5 months before he died, he hinted that he no longer had the enthusiasm he once had.
The older I get, the more those moments come along when I feel that I'm sort of sitcommed out. So you have to remember that I've been doing this sort of work for the better part of 16 years. And there are times when I feel a little tired, but then I realize how much worse it could be by sitting around not doing anything.
He was 62 years old and felt he had accomplished everything he had wanted to in the business.
I have no need to prove anything to whom. You know, I've reached an age now where I'm thinking of retiring. Maybe not. I just saw a paycheck now, and I realize what folly that is. The dumbest thing I ever said.
Ted died in August of 1986. E.T. was there when his Mary Tyler Moore castmates expressed their sadness over the loss.
When we first heard the news, I heard myself saying, oh, oh. He was there when my son died. He was there for me, and I knew he was suffering from cancer, and then that he had slipped into a coma, and that it wouldn't be long.
I got to see him before he died, and I had no idea he'd be going this quickly.
Ed and Ted had long since buried the hatchet and had become very close.
We thought of each other as a brother. Brothers fight, they sometimes hate each other, but they're still brothers, and that very much was the relationship with Ted and me.
His passing devastated his former co-stars. They got together for Ted's private funeral, and the service strangely mirrored that of the famous Chuckles the Clown funeral episode.
All through the service, all we kept hearing was tweet, 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 tweet. They got simulated birds in the background. It started that whole laugh routine at funerals, at Ted's funeral.
His life had been too short, and in the few short months before his death, Ted reflected on what was special about acting that kept him going.
It's not money, it's just having a place to go and being with friends and people you enjoy being with, and knowing you're doing something that maybe in some small way will bring a smile to someone's face, and that in itself is a reward.
Oh, and make him laugh he could. As a matter of fact, Betty White told us that whenever the writers felt that a particular show was kind of weak, they would just add a scene featuring Ted, knowing that he could run with it and it would end up a winner.
Coming up, this is Entertainment Tonight, and you're watching Memories of the Mary Tyler Moore Show.
Mary's career continued to thrive after the show ended, but for the woman who could turn the world on with a smile, real life was often filled with more pain and sadness than one could ever imagine.
When given the alternative, what else does one do but survive?
If ever there was one quality that Mary Tyler Moore has developed through the years, survival would be it. The personal tragedies with which she has had to contend would rival that found in the biblical story of Job.
She had so many things. Her sister died, her brother died, she had a lot of stuff to handle, and handled it like the champ she is.
In 1978, she lost her 21-year-old sister to an overdose of drugs and alcohol. In 92, as she recounts in her book, After All, Mary tried to help her terminally ill brother John take his life by assisting him in taking large quantities of painkillers. She wrote, quote, "He extended his hand. I silently gave him the first batch of pills and water. But John's suicide attempt would fail. 3 months later, the cancer would claim him." But perhaps the greatest sadness she's faced was the accidental shooting death of her 24-year-old son, Richie.
He was a darling, wonderful, sweet, good boy.
In October of 1980, while cleaning a gun, a faulty hair trigger resulted in his death.
And Mary called me, and we stood at the nurse's station and talked for about a half hour. And she was saying, "Betty, it was all so good. Where did it all go? What happened?" And it was probably the lowest moment in either one of our lives.
I think she had a lot of regret and a lot of pain, and she was so young when she had him.
Life's tragedies, as Mary told us in 1996, were the obstacles that tested her strength.
It's not to say that I haven't felt the sadness of my life, but that I have taken it in stride and been able to continue to contribute to my life and other people's lives.
And chief among the ways in which Mary has made a difference in people's lives has been her tireless work as the international chairperson of the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. She was even named its Woman of the Decade for helping to raise millions of dollars. It's a disease she knows all too well, having lived with it herself since her early 20s.
I take 3 injections a day to make sure that I stay as close to what would be the natural production of insulin that my body would do. I'm one of the lucky ones. I haven't had too many terrible side effects yet, But they await me. They await everyone who has diabetes, especially the youngsters.
In her personal life, Mary has found happiness in her 16-year marriage to New York cardiologist Robert Levine. A doctor 18 years her junior, the two have blissfully outlasted the cynics who said their union would never survive.
Hold on. Great like that. Fabulous like that. These are the pictures.
And Mary's had no shortage of work either. She has done it all. There have been magazine covers that have referred to her as an icon.
Whenever anyone refers to me, which doesn't happen often, but if they do, I always try to link with that a term my then 3-year-old nephew used on me. He called me a duty head. So it's icon-duty head, and that puts me right back to center.
And there have been movies like her Oscar-nominated role in 1980's Ordinary People, and more recently, Flirting with Disaster. On television, she's returned in a number of guest shots, series of her own, and TV movies, even winning an Emmy in 1993 for Stolen Babies. There's been no shortage of recognition from her peers. 1 year ago, the Mary Tyler Moore Show was honored by the Television Academy.
It's a wonderful feeling. And you get to have a bust. I have a bust.
You always had a bust, honey, no matter how thin. And a darn good one. Yeah.
And while she's done it all, Mary is one who also believes you can go home again.
So here I am. Oh, here you are, and it's Rhoda.
Next month on ABC, Mary will re-team with Valerie Harper in Mary and Rhoda, a 2-hour special that finds the pair reuniting after years spent apart.
Did you stay in the news business?
No, I left about 8 years ago.
It was wonderful working with her. I feel more comfortable and more creative and freer with her than almost any other performer I've ever worked with.
She is, and would be the first to tell you, one who believes in looking forward, not back.
I know no other way. The option to not persevere is unacceptable. I wouldn't know how to choose it, to tell you the truth. I'm not just a survivor. I am a flourisher.
Mary's strength in sharing her life struggles is truly inspirational and is indeed what makes her a living legend. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The wrap party for the Mary Tyler Moore Show was so emotional that there was a box of Kleenex on every table.
Much needed, I'm sure.
Yep, I think so.
Well, we're going to say goodbye with a look at our show next week.